Hi everyone, I'm Sherry. In our last episode, we talked about the properties of porous sound-absorbing materials and resonant absorbers. Today, let's look at the main factors that affect porous absorbers and how to balance those factors to get the best cost effectiveness. If you're enjoying this, don't forget to hit follow. So, what influences the performance of a porous absorber? There are four big ones: thickness, porosity and density, the air gap depth behind the material, and the surface treatment. First, thickness. Generally, increasing the thickness of a porous absorber improves the low-frequency absorption coefficient, but thicker isn't always better. For the same material, if you double the thickness, the peak absorption frequency shifts down by about 1 octave. The thicker the material, the higher the absorption at low frequencies. However, above about 2000 Hz, the absorption coefficient barely changes with thickness. So, adding thickness mainly helps you absorb low-frequency sound, not so much the highs. In theory, if the absorber is backed by a rigid wall, the best absorption happens when the material thickness equals 1/4 of the wavelength of the target frequency. In practice, for mid and high frequencies, we typically use acoustic panels about 2 to 5 centimeters thick. It's easier to work with and more economical. When you really need strong low-frequency absorption, you might go for 5 to 10 centimeters thick panels. Every material has an economic thickness, and I've already put together a summary of the cost-effective thickness for each type of porous absorber, which you can check out. Second, porosity and density. So what is porosity? It's the percentage of void volume inside the material compared to its total volume. Most porous absorbers have a porosity over 70%. Higher porosity means lower density, and vice versa. The larger and more open the pores, the lower the airflow resistance. Flow resistance is the ratio of the pressure gradient to the airflow velocity under steady flow. If the density is too high or too low, the absorption performance drops. With the same thickness, increasing the density can raise the low and mid-frequency absorption, but the effect is smaller than what you get from increasing thickness, and high-frequency absorption might decrease a bit. Each type of porous material has an optimal density range for the best absorption, and we'll go over those ranges in a future episode. Third, the air cavity effect. This is the air gap between the material and the rigid wall behind it. Generally, the absorption coefficient increases as the air gap depth increases. A cavity structure saves material and is more economical than simply making the absorber thicker. The absorption goes up with deeper air gaps, but after a certain point, the improvement becomes much less noticeable. When the air gap depth is about 1/4 of the wavelength, or an odd multiple of that, the absorption reaches its maximum. When the depth is half the